At the Garfield High School Gymnasium in Los Angeles, on a Wednesday afternoon in the autumn of 1967, the overhead fluorescent lights cast a pale, even glow across the hardwood floor. Outside, the cars moved along East First Street without urgency. A delivery truck idled at a red light. A woman walked her dog along the sidewalk without looking up. None of it knew what was happening inside. There were 41 people in that gymnasium. 37 of them were students. Young men in their teens and early 20s, most of them with some background in karate or judo, a few with nothing more than the confidence that comes from never having been tested. 3 were instructors from neighboring schools, invited that afternoon to observe a visiting demonstration. 1 was a journalist from a regional martial arts publication who had driven 40 minutes from Pasadena with a notepad and no particular expectations. The man at the center of the floor was 24 years old. His name was Raymond Park. He stood 6 feet and 1 inch tall and weighed 209 pounds. He had begun training in Tang Soo Do at the age of 11. By the time he was 19, he held a second-degree black belt. By 22, he had won regional tournaments in 3 separate weight divisions across California and Nevada. He had never been knocked down in competition, not once in 11 years. He had a reach of 78 inches, hands that had broken 14 boards in a single strike demonstration, and a tournament record that read 43 wins and no losses. He was not a man performing the role of a martial artist. He was the genuine article, and every person in that gymnasium understood this within 2 minutes of watching him move. He had been invited to give a demonstration on pressure point strikes and their application in close-range defense. He was good at this. He was very good. The students leaned forward in their bleacher seats as he worked through his technique sequence with an assistant, and the 3 visiting instructors exchanged glances of the specific kind that pass between professionals who recognize something real. At the end of the demonstration, Park took a slow walk around the edge of the floor, allowing questions. Then, he stopped. There was a man sitting in the 4th row of the bleachers. He was wearing a plain white t-shirt, dark trousers, and shoes that had no business being on a gymnasium floor. He was 27 years old. He weighed 140 pounds. He had said nothing since the demonstration began. He had not applauded. He had not leaned forward. He was watching with the particular stillness of a man who has already cataloged what he is seeing and has moved on to a secondary level of analysis. In the next 14 seconds, Raymond Park would make a decision that 41 people in that gymnasium would spend the rest of their lives describing. Nobody in that room understood what they were about to witness. The man in the 4th row had not told them his name. If you have watched this channel before, then you already know what happens to men who mistake quiet for weakness. Stay with this until the end. The sentence Bruce Lee spoke from the floor of that gymnasium would travel across 3 continents in the years that followed, and it would change the way an entire generation understood what martial arts actually was. Raymond Park had a quality that many champions carry without recognizing as a flaw. He believed what he saw. Not what was demonstrated, not what was proven, but what he could immediately observe with his eyes. A man who is large confirms what experience has taught him. A man who is small does not register as relevant information. This is not cruelty. It is pattern recognition developed over 11 years in rooms exactly like this one. The pattern had never failed him. Until this afternoon, there had been no reason to question it. He had finished answering the 3rd question from the floor when he turned and noticed the man in the white t-shirt for the first time. Not noticed him for the first time in the room, Park had cataloged the entire audience when he walked in, as trained fighters always do. But he noticed him now in the specific sense of assigning him weight, giving him dimension, deciding that this person merited direct attention. He looked at the 140 pounds. He looked at the shoes. He made a calculation. He pointed. He said, in a voice loud enough for all 41 people in the gymnasium to hear, "You in the white shirt. You have been watching me the whole time. Tell me what you think you saw." It was not an invitation. The tone was wrong for an invitation. There was an additional texture to the sentence, a layered meaning that the 3 visiting instructors all registered at the same moment, because they were experienced enough to understand what Park was doing. He was not requesting a critique. He was constructing a situation. He was inviting a smaller, unremarkable-looking man to speak in public. so that the contrast between what the man said and what he clearly was could be appreciated by an audience that had just watched 45 minutes of serious technical work. The man in the fourth row did not answer immediately. He set down the notepad that had been resting on his knee. He placed the pen across the top of it with a deliberate, unhurried movement. Then he looked at Raymond Park with an expression that was not defiant and was not nervous and was not impressed. He said, quietly enough that the people in the upper rows had to lean forward, "I saw a man who has spent 11 years learning how to move inside the range where his opponent has already decided to commit." Park smiled. It was a particular kind of smile. The journalist in the back row wrote something in his notepad. Park said, "And what does that mean to you?" The man in the white t-shirt stood up. He did not hurry. He picked up his notepad and set it on the bleacher beside him. He stepped down from the fourth row to the third, then to the second, then to the floor. He walked to the edge of the mat. He removed his shoes. He placed them side by side at the mat's edge. He stepped onto the hardwood. He said, "It means I know where you are comfortable. I know where you are not." Park's smile did not change. He said, "Show me." In the bleachers, one of the visiting instructors, a man named Gerald Torres, who held a 4th-degree black belt in Shotokan and had trained for 17 years, put both hands flat on his knees. He did not know why. He would not be able to explain it later. He said only that something in the way the small man walked to the center of the floor produced a physical response in him that he had not experienced since he was a white belt watching his first real master move. He has already lost. Raymond Park has already lost. He does not know it yet. If you want to find out what happened in the next 14 seconds on that gymnasium floor, make sure you are subscribed to this channel and drop a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from. What happened in that room was witnessed by 41 people and has been told 10,000 different ways in the decades since. This is as close to the true account as exists anywhere. Raymond Park was a man who understood distance. This is important to establish before describing what happened, because without it, the next 14 seconds are merely a physical event. With it, they become a demonstration of something that the greatest martial artists in the world spend their entire lives trying to understand, and almost none of them ever fully articulate. Distance is not the space between two fighters. Distance is the architecture of a conflict. It is the invisible geometry that determines who has to move and who gets to choose. Every technique in every martial art is, at its foundation, an attempt to manipulate this geometry in one's own favor. A man who can set distance and control it does not need superior strength. He does not need superior reach. He does not even need superior speed, though that helps. He needs only to understand the calculation before his opponent does. Raymond Park understood distance at a high level. He had spent 11 years understanding it. The problem in this specific afternoon in this specific gymnasium was that he was about to meet a man for whom distance was not something to be understood. It was something to be felt, the way a musician feels time, the way a poet feels the weight of a particular word before he writes it down. Park took his stance at approximately 9 feet from the center of the floor. He was right-footed forward, left hand extended, chin tucked. Weight distributed 60% on the rear foot. This was his working stance. This was the stance from which 43 victories had been organized and delivered. It was not a pose, it was a home. The man in the white t-shirt stood at the center of the floor and did not take a stance. He stood in what appeared, to most of the 41 people watching, to be simply the way a man stands when he is waiting for a bus. Weight central, hands at his sides, head level, shoulders neither raised nor dropped. Gerald Torres, on the bleachers, understood immediately that this was not casualness. This was something else entirely. He would say 22 years later in an interview with a martial arts publication that what he was looking at was a man standing in a form of readiness so refined that it had become invisible. Like watching a river and not seeing the current until something is dropped into it. Park moved first. He covered the 9 feet with 3 steps and launched a front kick aimed at the center mass, a textbook opening that he had used successfully in 26 of his 43 recorded victories. It was fast. It was mechanically correct. It landed on nothing. Second one. The man in the white t-shirt moved 4 inches to his left and slightly forward. The kick passed his right hip with a clearance that Torres would later estimate at less than 3 inches. The movement was so small that 7 of the 41 people in the gymnasium did not register that it had happened at all. They would report, in subsequent tellings, that the kick simply missed, as if Park had misjudged the distance on his own. They did not have the training to see the redirection. Second 2. Park's right hand came around immediately after the kick landed, a hook that covered the distance between a missed front kick and a follow-through combination, which is the corridor where most fights are actually won. Experienced fighters do not miss and then pause. They miss and keep working. This was the specific technique that had won Park his last 11 tournament matches. It did not find its mark. The man in the white t-shirt slipped the hook by rotating his upper body 11 degrees to his left, a number that Torres arrived at later by attempting to reproduce the movement himself repeatedly over the course of an entire afternoon, while simultaneously not moving his feet at all. His feet did not move. This is the detail that Torres found most remarkable and would discuss most frequently in the years that followed. The feet did not move, but the hook found only air, because the target that the hook was aimed at was no longer in the location where the hook arrived. In the bleachers, the journalist from Pasadena had stopped writing. He was holding his pen above the notepad with no pressure and no movement, suspended, the way a man holds his breath without deciding to. Second 3. Park reset. This was a trained response, and it was executed correctly. He did not overcommit. He stepped back to a range of 6 feet, reassessed and prepared to re-engage. 43 victories had taught him that a missed combination is information. It tells you something about how your opponent moves. He was using it as information. He was recalculating. The man in the white t-shirt did not pursue him. He had not moved more than 14 inches in any direction since the exchange began. He remained near the center of the floor and watched Park reset with the same expression he had been wearing since he stepped onto the mat. A woman waiting outside the gymnasium at that moment, waiting to speak to one of the instructors about her son's enrollment, would later say that she heard a sound from inside that she could not immediately identify. A sound like 30 people exhaling at the same moment, though not in distress. More like the sound a crowd makes at the very edge of comprehension when something is happening that the mind is still 4 seconds behind in processing. Second 4. Park came forward again. This time he led with his left hand, a jab at long range designed not to land but to measure, to set up the cross that would follow from his right. This was sound strategy. This was exactly what 43 victories looked like from the inside. The jab did not land. The cross that followed the jab did not land. Neither of them was slipped or deflected. They were simply not permitted to enter the space they were aimed at, because the space had been quietly rearranged. Gerald Torres would spend 17 minutes in the car on the way home trying to explain to the instructor sitting in the passenger seat what he had seen. He never fully managed it. He said finally that it was like watching a man try to catch smoke, not because the smoke was fast, because smoke is not where you reach. Second 5. The man in the white t-shirt moved for the first time with something that registered visibly as intent. He closed the distance between them in one step, not a lunge, not a leap, a single controlled step that covered 4 feet and arrived in a range that Park had not been operating in and was not immediately prepared for. His left hand came up and made contact with Park's right forearm, not a strike, something more like a gesture of acknowledgement, a hand placed on a door before opening it, and his right hand was already traveling on a line that passed through the specific location where Park's jaw was located. He stopped it 1 inch short. The contact, when it did not arrive, produced a sound in the gymnasium that Torres described as the absence of a sound that should have been there and was not. Park stood. He was breathing. His jaw was present and undamaged. 1 inch away from it, a closed right hand was held absolutely still. The man in the white t-shirt held the position for 3 full seconds, long enough for every person in the gymnasium to understand the geography of what had happened. Long enough for the journalist to begin writing again, though he wrote only a single word, which he later said was inadequate and has never shared publicly. Then the hand came down. The man in the white t-shirt stepped back. he extended his right hand, open, palm up, in the space between them. The gymnasium was silent in the specific way that rooms become silent when 41 people are performing the same act of concentration simultaneously. Park looked at the hand. He looked at the man. Then he looked at the floor, at the place on the hardwood where a fight had lasted 14 seconds and had never quite been a fight at all. He breathed once. Slowly, he took the hand. They stood there for a moment. Then the man in the white t-shirt leaned forward and said something directly into Park's ear. His voice was low enough that no one in the gymnasium could hear the words. Park's expression as he listened moved through 3 distinct phases, something that looked like resistance, then something that looked like recognition, then something that looked very much like the particular relief that arrives when a man stops carrying a belief he has held too long. Park stepped back. He did not make an excuse. He did not gesture toward the crowd or the context or the conditions of the floor. He looked at the man in the white t-shirt, and he nodded once, slowly, in the manner of a man settling an account. Then he said, "I want to know who you are." The man in the white t-shirt told him. Raymond Park did not train with Bruce Lee in the months that followed. Their paths did not converge again in any documented capacity. But Park's style of teaching changed in the year after the autumn of 1967 in ways that his longtime students noticed and remarked upon. He began emphasizing distance management above technique sequences. He began telling his students that a technique without an understanding of its geometry is a sentence spoken in the wrong room. He never said where this had come from. Gerald Torres told the story within the week. He told it to the man who ran the dojo where he taught, who told it to 2 instructors from a school in San Diego who were visiting for a weekend seminar, who told it across the following months to everyone they trained with. By 1969, the story was circulating in martial arts communities across California in at least 4 different versions, varying in the number of people present, the duration of the exchange, and what exactly Bruce Lee had said before the exchange began. In some versions, Park threw 7 techniques. In some versions, he threw 3. In one version that Torres encountered in 1972, Park was described as a former professional boxer, which he was not. The story had begun to become the kind of story that stories become when they are true enough to be told and interesting enough to be improved. The detail that remained consistent across every version, in every telling, across every year, was the position of the stopped punch. 1 inch. Always 1 inch. No version of the story ever moved it to 2 inches or removed it entirely, because that detail was the one that had burned into the room's memory with a precision that survived every subsequent distortion. You do not misremember the inch. It is too specific. It is too exact. It is the kind of measurement that the human mind holds on to because it contains the entire meaning of what happened. Bruce Lee would speak and write in the years that followed about what he called the honest approach to combat. Not the honest approach in a moral sense, though there was morality in it, but honest in the specific sense of accurately perceiving what is in front of you rather than what you have been trained to expect. He wrote about the danger of style, not the danger of having a style, but the danger of becoming so fluent in a style that the style begins to replace your perception of the opponent standing before you. You stop seeing the man. You see the space where your technique is supposed to go. Raymond Park was not a fraud. He was not a braggart. He was a genuine talent who had won 43 fights. The problem was not his ability. The problem was that his ability had become, in a specific and invisible way, a limitation. He knew where he was good. He knew it so well that he had stopped examining whether the man across from him had read the same map. He had not. The lesson that 41 people carried out of the Garfield High School gymnasium on that Wednesday afternoon was not about Bruce Lee's speed. Though his speed was remarkable, it was not about Park's failure, though he had failed. It was about the specific cost of certainty, of knowing a thing so completely that you forget the thing might know something back. There is a version of strength that looks exactly like weakness until the moment it is required to be strength. A man who has spent a decade becoming genuinely dangerous can make the mistake of believing that danger has a shape he already recognizes. It does not. Danger is patient. Danger does not always weigh 209 pounds. Sometimes it sits in the fourth row in a white t-shirt and watches you with the specific attention of a man who is already 3 steps ahead and has no interest in telling you so. What Bruce Lee said into Raymond Park's ear that afternoon in the 14-inch space between 2 men after a 14-second exchange was not recorded and was not shared publicly by either man. Park acknowledged the conversation existed in a single interview given in 1984, 16 years after it occurred. He said only that it was not an insult and was not a boast and was not an instruction. He said it was a question. He has never repeated the question. Some things travel better as silence than as words. The gymnasium already knew the answer. Next week we will tell the story of the afternoon in Hong Kong when a film producer told Bruce Lee that he was not physically convincing enough to appear in his own action sequences, and what happened in the following 4 minutes that caused the producer to revise his position permanently and quietly and without further discussion. That story has been told many times. Very few of the tellings include the detail about the door.